Good morning. Welcome to Abrasive and Proud of It Live. Normally this would be where Mike Z would be standing, but he's behind the camera today. We got a special guest. I'm Chris. I want to welcome you here. And today we're going to talk about sharpening your carving tools and chisels. So we talked about turning chisels a while back. Now we're going to talk about carving chisels. Much more fine, much more honed. And we have a special guest. We have, I guess, world-renowned author, been carving all of his life. We've invited him to come down from the mountains. Paul Rolfe, come on down.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah. All right, so we're here to talk today about carving tools and sharpening carving tools. Sharpening has always been a challenge for a lot of folks, and for good reason. It's if you think about woodworking in general, woodworking tools, carving tools, there are probably more jigs out there to help you sharpen tools than any other type of jigs in woodworking. There are things to set the angles and whatnot, but there's a lot of stuff out there. There's very few things actually apply to carving tools. One of the reasons why we have such difficulties in sharpening is because we're human. We have got our bodies, we've got joints all over the place, and that restricts us, that makes us very mobile. But in order to sharpen a tool to the precision that it needs to be for carving, you have to maintain a very critical angle throughout the sharpening process.
Well, what angles do you typically carve at or sharpen at?
It varies. It depends on whether I'm working on hardwoods or softwoods. It's anywhere from just broadly from 20 degrees to 25 degrees. I have found that in softwoods, when you drive a tool into the wood, you're driving a wedge into that wood, into the fibers of that wood. And the fiber of the wood has to move out of the way to make room for that wedge coming into it. And softwoods cannot tolerate that trauma as well as hardwoods can. So in softwoods, your tool has to be sharpened with a longer, narrower, sharper bevel than it does on hardwood. So it's kind of counterintuitive. Some folks, you think, well, you're going to be carving hardwoods today, your tools better be really, really sharp. When really the inverse of that is true, you're going to be carving on softwoods today, your tools need to be really, really sharp, and that's the truth. But most of the times, the angle that I sharpen the tool is the same angle that I use to carve the tools, carving with the tools. And so it's kind of muscle memory, comes with years of practice. I've been carving since 1974 and trained traditionally, which means that I use primarily gouges and chisels for carving for about 90% of the time. I do use knives 10% of the time, or I'll use power tools. When I'm carving, and I carve professionally, when I'm carving for a living, you want to use whatever tool is going to get you the end product as fast as you can, whether it's power tools, hand tools, or whatever. That determines what to do. But so for sharpening chisels and things, there are angles, there are jigs that you can put those tools into that hold it at that critical angle throughout the process. It makes it very easy. You mount the chisel in that tool, and you move it back and forth, and to create that exact bevel throughout the process. For carving tools, it doesn't work as well because there's the extra curvature into the sweep. The sweep refers to the number or the curvature of the gouge, the cutting edge of the gouge. So that adds a different thing. So there never has been really a good jig for hand sharpening gouges. There are jigs for power sharpening. Torment make excellent jigs for using their tool to sharpen carving tools. That's another whole different thing, but they don't apply. They don't cross over well to sharpen things by hand. So.
Well, and just like any other kind of sharpening, the precision and repeatability, I'm sure, is key. Being able to maintain and repeat that angle each time you come back to it.
It is, and that's where sharpening is a skill that takes almost as long to learn as carving does. It's another whole set of parallel skills that have to be learned. And just like carving, practice is what it takes, and you can't be frustrated by having trouble in the beginning, because you just stick at it, and eventually you'll get that muscle memory that you need to be able to get reproducible results.
Cool.
And so today we're going to go over sharpening a gouge by hand. This is a line of tools that we just recently started carrying. It is a Chinese manufactured tool, but it is designed according to European patterns for the most part. Throughout my career in carving, I've always used European manufactured tools, and not really certain about Chinese tools. I always stayed away from them. But these tools I have been very pleased with these tools. They hold an edge well. They'll use them a lot in classes, and they hold an edge well. Nice things about them is they also come in the fishtail design. But the biggest thing, attraction to them, is if you're just starting carving and you want to start buying tools, European-made tools are excellent quality. You can't beat the quality. They've been making them for centuries. But they're more expensive. These tools are $19.95 each. Doesn't matter whether that big or that big. They're $19.95 unless you buy them as a set. If you buy them as a set, then they're only $10 each. So it kind of blows my mind how they can make tools for $10 a piece and make them any good. But actually, I've been very pleased with these tools. So,
and what's the brand of those, just so everybody knows?
They are the Master Carver, marked under the Master Carver brand, and we have a pretty good selection of these tools in stock in the store. So,
yep. All right. Well, it looks like we've got some diamond and some other stones and some strops and whatnot. So I guess if you want to show how to do a basic sharpening, then we'll talk about some of the other stuff we have on the table here.
Okay. Sharpening, I have for years and years used oil stones. And the primary reason that I used oil stones is because that's what I had. I didn't have the resources when I got started to buy a lot of. There weren't a lot of other things available to me. But there choices nowadays are you can get oil stones, water stones, diamond stones, ceramic stones, or even sandpaper. And all of these things work. They'll all give you good results. The critical thing is the technique. If you use the proper techniques and you get a good technique established, then you'll get good results no matter what you do. Now, each of these systems have different advantages and disadvantages, whether it's cost, whether it's speed, whether it's longevity of the tools themselves, or the stones themselves, rather. They all weigh against other. People tend to like some of the other. Oil stones, for instance, are natural products. They're graded by their density. They're either hard, soft, or extremely hard. If you're looking for, if you like numbers and you have an engineering background and you like specific numbers and they appeal to you, then you may have a hard time getting used to oil stones because they're generic in their hardness. Whereas water stones, on the other hand, diamond stones, they're manufactured to specific grits. So you can go through stages in carving that are using those stones. So what I'm going to demonstrate here with is a diamond stone, and diamond stones are very, very efficient. They cut quickly and give you good results. They come in very different specific grits. So it is, if you're looking for that specificity and know exactly which grits, what steps to go through, diamond grits are a good choice for you.
Now, do you find you like the diamond stones that have the sort of diamond pattern with the areas in between there clear, or do you find you like the solid, more traditional card stones that are?
Well, they come in different ways, and to be honest with you, I'm not really sure exactly why they manufacture these. I know that I'm not a big fan of the stones that have the little dots of diamond, the braces on them. I like the fuller coverage a bit better. This particular stone is a combination stone. It has a coarse grit on one side. It's a 300 grit, and the other side is a 1000 grit. And so it gives you that capability of switching between two grits with one stone. So and the 300 grit has the cross-hatch pattern in the diamonds, whereas the 1000 is, and I suppose when you're using the 300, you're removing a lot of material, and so that gives these little grooves in there give you the slurry a place to go.
Yep. Channels for your waste.
Channels for the waste.
That's what we all need.
Whereas when you get into the finer grits, the 1000 grit, for instance, you're not generating as much waste, and so you're more concerned about how smooth and precise that surface is when you're sharpening. So,
and I guess you could kind of cross that over to open coat versus closed coat with sandpaper. Sure. The open coat gives you those channels to remove the waste. Right. Closed coat's going to give you a better finish. But so yeah, sweet. And that looks like one of the trend diamonds there. So
yes, it is.
They've got really good products.
All right. Now, just like most all the stones, it's recommended that you use a lubricant for the stone. And the diamond stones have trend has their own lapping fluid that's used with those. It's a very, very thin solution. And really the purpose for that is so that the metal particles that you generate don't get embedded into the stone. They'll float and stay and expose the grit of the stone so it'll work more efficiently. So the technique that I use, as I mentioned, the difficulties that we have in sharpening by hand are joints that we have. And so that my technique involves eliminating as many of those variables as you can. Mike, if you want to move that camera up just a little bit so you can see more rather than just the bench. So the first variable that I am going to eliminate, first of all, I do this standing up, and I recommend doing this standing up because it gives you the reproducible effects that you want. You can do it sitting down. I have taught several folks how to do this sitting down if you're restricted to sitting down, or if you need to sit down. It can be done either way. You can overcome this, but the standing is a much more versatile way of doing this. And you stand in front of the stone, in front of the bench, your feet parallel to the stone, shoulder width apart. The first variable that I eliminate are my arm joints, and I do that by locking my elbows at my side. So now my elbows are here. I've eliminated that variable of joints right here. The second one I'm going to take out are my elbows, the second movement or second joint. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to hold the tool and I'm going to point the handle right in my navel. It's going to stay in that position all the time. And that locks my elbows in, because it's as long as if I keep it pointed in the same place, it's going to move it down. So notice right here, if I'm standing like this, well, there's a long way between the stone and where the tool is right now, so I have to make up for that distance. And that distance varies, of course, on the height of the bench that you're working on. And so what I do is I lean over the stone, so my nose generally, and I apologize for pointing my bald spot at the camera and reflecting light into the thing. But anyway, my nose is pointed to the stone, so my weight is right over the stone. And to get the tool down to the stone, I bend my knees. So my knees come straight down. And to start the sharpening process, I simply transfer weight from one foot to the other. I'm not swinging like this, which involves another joint. There's a hip joint. So I want to take that hip joint out of the equation. And I'm just moving my weight from one foot to another. The pressure that I'm putting down on the stone is like a firm handshake. It's not hard, it's not soft. It is just just a little bit of pressure. Now I can step away from the stone and move back if I have to answer the telephone or nature's call or something. I can get back. My body hasn't changed from when I stepped away from the stone again, so I can quit and come back to this. I point the butt end of the chisel, the gouge to my navel, and then go right back. And I feel confident that that angle is reproduced. Now, the one hand is rotating the gouge so that it covers the whole sweep. The other hand is putting the downward pressure on. If you're doing this correctly, your head should move from side to side at the same level. If I'm rocking my hips, then my head's going to move in an arc. But if I am doing this correctly, it's like you're in a low ceiling room and your head is scraping the ceiling the whole time.
So you're not teaching a golf swing here.
No.
And you're not giving 3 sets of 20 fitness to work out your legs and your abs there.
No, it's not. It's not aerobic at all. Now, I don't know if the camera can pick this up or not, but you can actually see the dark slurry in the sand. That is the metal filings that is coming off the end of the tool. Now, when you start the process, right after you get into it, you want to check for 2 things. Look at your gouge, and what you want to see is a band of abrasion where you have been carving, where you've been sharpening. You want a parallel band, and I'm looking at this, and I have the width is consistent all the way across except right at the tips. So that means it tells me that I'm not getting out at the tips as well as I need to be. So I need to focus on rotating the tool a little bit more.
Now, when Scott Caskey was here talking about sharpening the turning tools, he used a little trick of taking a Sharpie to the end or the bevel part of the tool so that you could get a good clean look.
Yes.
Do you find that's helpful in carving tools as well?
Now, was he using a machine?
He was using the Torment.
Okay. And there's a difference between hand sharpening and machine sharpening. Machine sharpening, you're removing material quickly. And so, yes, that's a very good thing to do. So you can see your progress, whether you're going in the right, because you don't want to go in the wrong direction. So you want to check your progress here. This is a slower process, and so you can go a little bit slower. So what I want to do, your first objective is to get a burr on the inside. You want to take that metal and roll it over. So Chris, take your finger and pull it across it like that. Can you feel a little burr there?
Oh, there's a nice burr there.
That burr is critical.
Burr.
What that burr tells you is that you have gotten to the edge. If you have not gotten to the edge, or if you did not get a burr, it means you have not gotten to the edge yet. So you could spend a lot of time going through this entire process and get finished and say, this tool's still not sharp. Why is it not? Because you didn't get to the edge. That burr tells you, yes. Now, the objective is to have the smallest burr possible. You don't want to have, the larger the burr is, the harder it is to remove. So you just want to put a very, very subtle burr across the length of the tool. So I've done this on the 300 grit. I've got the burr. I'm done with that grit. So I'm going to clean it off and turn it over. The trend comes with this nice little pad underneath of it that keeps the stone from moving while you're working. This Arkansas stone that I have is adhered to a wooden base. And what I like about that, this is a vintage stone. I have no idea how old it is, but I expect it's older than I am. It has nails driven in through the base that just poke out through the center for the bottom. And you put that on your bench, and those little nail tips dig into don't make a big mark, but they do lock the stone in so they don't move. So that's kind of a neat little trick there on that. The other approach of what I will do, sometimes if I'm not using it. This is a black Arkansas stone, which is as fine as they get. This is a surgical tool. This will put a mirror polish on your edge. It is the last step in the stone process that you go through. If I'm using a stone without any type of holding way, sometimes I'll use the vise and just clamp the stone into the vise. Be careful not to drop it as I tighten it up. So, but at some point or another, your stone has to be secure so it doesn't move. So I've done with the 300 grit. I'm moving to the 1000 grit, more of the lubrication. And what I'm doing here I'm not doing anything with the burr, but I'm just polishing the surface that I did previously with a 300 grit. It doesn't take much on the diamond stones. The next step is to deal with the burr. And to deal with that burr, you have to use what's called a slipstone. I have a couple of different slipstones, and these are the ones. This one I probably use 75, 80% of the time. It's a hard Arkansas stone. It is tapered so that it has a larger curve on one side and a narrow curve on the other. We just now got those in to the store here, so we do carry those stones. The other one that I have is a ceramic stone. These two are my absolute favorites. Like I said, I use these all the time. This one has a curved surface on one side, but it comes to a point on the other. This one is critical when you're getting to the inside of really small gouges or V-tools. And we also carry that one as well. Slipstones are a very important part of the sharpening process. So what you do with a slipstone is you put it up against the inside of the tool flat, and you simply move it, drag it on the inside of the stone or the inside of the gouge. So what you're doing is you're taking that burr that was like that and you're standing it up. You're just not taking it off, but you're just taking it like that to up like that. And you can tell that it's not there, it is still there. So there are some authors out there that argue that you should put a secondary bevel on the inside of the gouge. My problem with that is that it goes back to that critical angle deal. How do you maintain that critical angle? Through this sharpening process, you can reproduce that critical angle. If you had a jig on the Torment, you can reproduce that critical angle. But how do you regulate something that's done by hand like that? You can't reproduce this angle every time. If you hold it flat up against the inside of the tool, that's flat, that's reproducible. It'll do that every time. So okay, so almost there. So what I'm going to do, so now feel that.
Nice.
So
you got a little bit more on that corner right there.
Right there, and I'll get to it. Like I said, the burr's still there, but it's just standing up now as a bit. So I'm gonna go back to the 1000 grit stone, and now I'm polishing the edge, but I'm also taking that burr and I'm going to fold it back over again. So now the burr is back. This it is kind of like when you open a can, a soft drink can, you take that aluminum top and you open it and you bend it and you open it and you back and forth, eventually it falls off. Mm-hmm. This is what we're trying to do to that burr. We're going to keep bending it over one way or the other way until eventually it will fall off. So what you want to see is little metal filings floating in your lapping fluid there. Those little metal filings are that burr that has come off. Now, Chris, let's just see if I can hit your spot there.
Yeah. If not, I'm gonna call you out.
Yeah.
I mean, since you've been doing this since before I was born, it's the least I could do.
I appreciate that. Be gentle. Be gentle. Wow, Sissy, you got some respect there, boy.
I do, sir. I respect your wisdom and experience and knowledge in this craft, because I can't do it. Yeah. I usually find those. I just can't figure out how to get rid of them. Good show. And you can definitely see the streak from the waste material in the stone now.
Yeah, if this was a waterstone, for instance, and I continued using that waterstone like this, waterstones, the thing about waterstones is they cut very, very fast. And the reason why they cut fast is because they wear down fast and they create an abrasive slurry that removes a lot of the material fast. But the problem is you'll get a groove in your stone. So it would be, if you had water stones, it would be best to switch over. A good idea to move around the stone as much as you can, use different parts of it. But diamond stones are not going to have that issue as bad, but it's still a good idea probably to use different parts. And the tendency is always to use right down the middle. Another thing I should mention is that notice that, you know, the strokes of the tool are long and they're very efficient. If I tried to sharpen this same thing on a short stone, I'm going back and forth, kind of a herky-jerky motion, and it makes it very inefficient. There's more opportunity that an error is going to occur, and I'm going to get off that critical angle. The longer the tool, the better. So if you can get tools in 4 inches on up to 11 and 12 inches long, get the longest tool, the longest stone that you can find. Okay, so burr is just something there. Now, I'm going to spend some time doing this, or rather, I'm not going to spend some time doing this just for the sake of production here. So I'm going to move on to the next step. What I'm hoping to do is get that notion. Also, Chris, you'll notice how polished that line is, that new bevel that I have put.
Nice and clean.
There, nice and clean. Now, the bevels are very important on a carving tool. If you use a machine like a Torment, it'll put a hollow grind bevel on because you're using the round edge of the tool. A carving tool depends on the bevels to work. In order for a gouge to work, you want that gouge to go into the wood, rock on that bevel, and come back out again. You don't want it to just keep dive bombing into the wood. You want to go into the wood, rock on the bevel, and come back out. As that bevel is dragged over the surface of the wood, it'll burnish it and leave a nice shiny polish to the wood. That's one way you can tell when your tools are getting dull, is if your wood is not shiny as the tool goes across it, or if it has some scratches in it. That tells you, that's your signal, that one signal or two signals that your tool is not as sharp as it needs to be. But the bevels, if you have a hollow grind, then you'll have a high spot here and a high spot there, and the tool will go in at the edge and then in a rock to the secondary where the other high spot is. And you'll get a rocking motion on the tool. If you put a small secondary bevel on it with the Torment, that'll help. But it's probably a critical thing to do on the Torment, is to put that secondary, because it's easy to do on the Torment. So, but after that bevel has been removed, the final step in the process is the stropping. The stropping is done on a piece of leather. Now, this is a piece of leather that's as old as the hills where I live, almost. It's just a piece of cowhide that has been glued to a piece of wood. After gluing it on, I ran the strop over the table saw to generate this angle protruding out off of one side of it. And the reason for that is so I can use it on the inside of the gouge or V-tools or something like that. Some of the strops that are available out there today, and there's a lot of them available, they have that angle built into them, and some of them don't. But there's a huge variety of different. Yeah, that one's got a little angle, especially up here at the very end.
So you have your radius top, the beveled angle there, and then the flat edge there.
Now, the leather by itself doesn't do anything, so you need to apply an abrasive compound to the leather to get it to polish, and there are several of those available as well. This is it's a pink stone that they call Yellowstone stropping compound, but you just rub it on literally. If you want to make your own strop, we do carry these pieces of cowhide. I finally got them to put the labels on the polished side rather than the rough side. Because if you glue these down on a piece of wood, you want to use them with the nap side up. Don't be tempted to put the nap side down and glue it, but that's the reason why now the labels are on that stuff. So you glue that side down. You use it with the nap side up. That's so it'll hold more compound as you put it on. And I've been doing this for over 40 years, and just as a lesson that we still continue to learn stuff. I have learned recently that I'm too frugal on my stropping compounds. I should be using a lot more than I have been using. In fact, I've been told actually that you can take it and put a powder down onto the wood and rub it into the wood to generate more of a bite. But,
that sounds like something that the stropping compound manufacturers will tell you.
Actually, that's where I learned it, Chris.
No, you use more of our product. It works better.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So to do the stropping motion, I like having it. A lot of people will just take the piece of leather and lay it on their bench and do the stropping with that. I kind of like to have a handle on it just because it's easier to hold. The stropping is done by pulling the gouge away from the cutting edge and rotating it over to, across the end of it to cover the cutting edge of the sweep. It is critical to also do the inside. And to do the inside, you turn it upside down and you kind of go over the edge of the tool. Like so. If this was a smaller gouge or a V-tool, then I would use this part where I cut the angle on the leather. Again, I'm starting here, and as I pull it back, I rotate or drag the length of the edge over so that I finish on the other end of the tool. So you continue with this. Until the burr is now, the edge is now polished. And a couple of ways of telling that, number one is just to feel it. And you can feel it with your fingertips. What I generally like to do is use my fingernail. Your fingernail is incredibly sensitive. And of course, children don't do this at home. But as you drag your fingernail over that edge of the tool, it's very sensitive. You can feel any little bit of burr that's left there. And the second way to test is just to go over a piece of wood. And if there's a burr still there, you can see it. You'll feel it, and you'll see the little telltale stripes in the wood. Now this one I can tell already without putting it in the wood that it still has a burr there, so it needs. So I can continue on the stropping process, and if it feels like you're stropping forever and ever, and that burr's still there, that means you need to go back to the fine grit stone and work that bevel and alternate between the fine grit stone and the strop. And
yeah, my mama used one of these on me when I was a kid. That's why it turned out so good.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a little longer and had little holes and a belt buckle to it, but it worked.
Yeah, I seem to recall one of those hanging by the side door at the house. Either that, or there was conveniently a willow tree beside the house too. Your parents don't do that anymore nowadays, do they?
Well, not in public.
Only in Walmart's.
Yeah, so when you say go get the strop, PTSD kicks in. I cringe and kind of want to turn around and make sure I'm keeping my eyes on it.
Yeah. Stropping seems like it takes a long time, and it does. And there's a couple of different ways to spread this speed bed out. One of these, and I call this a poor man's Torment. It is a leather wheel that you can, with two arbors that you can mount. So there's two wheels. One is a flat one, and another one comes to a V. You can mount these in a drill. You can mount it on a drill press. You can mount it on a lathe if you have it. But one lesson that goes across all facets of woodworking is that a curved surface, or metalworking too, for that matter, a curved surface is a much more efficient cutting surface than a flat surface is. So it'll remove more material quickly. So you can actually strop your edge and polish your edge a lot faster on a wheel than you can doing it on a flat stone. That's why a carving gouge is more efficient as far as removing material than a flat bladed chisel or a knife is, because it has that curved surface that'll give you a nice shape.
Yeah, well, I know we sell quite a few of these from Flex Cut.
We do.
That have a lot of those profiles built into it.
Yeah, and those profiles are there to do the inside, polish the inside of the gouge. And incidentally, you know, the techniques that we just showed you with sharpening tools, they can be done with full-size tools or palm tools, either one. It doesn't matter which one. Palm tools, or you'll be standing a little closer to the stone, but there's no reason why. In fact, you can even do them with chisels. You can do chisels the same way. V-tools, the one tool that gives a lot of people problems. I always like doing V-tools by hand because the process is slow, so you don't mess it up quickly. You know, you can catch where you're going down the wrong trail before you get too far down there and fix what you're doing. The one thing that I have found that really works well as far as machines goes, the Torment does an excellent job. V-tools. It reproduces the two angles. The V-tools, you got three elements. You've got one chisel here, you've got one chisel here, and you've got a tiny veiner in the bottom. And so all three of those parts have to be synchronized so that they give you a continuous surface without anything being out of sync with each other. And so,
yeah, too many swipes on one side compared to the other, and you're going to be offset.
Yeah, but there's one lesson about that, though, is that with a V-tool, what I have found, especially doing it by hand, sometimes I will have one angle that might be set back a little bit more than another. But what I have found is the wood doesn't know the difference. It'll cut just as well. As long as it's sharp and you don't have any burrs in it and no chips and anything, it'll cut just as well. So you don't. And a lot of times people are frustrated with doing V-tools because they're not perfect. You know, they're not like they were when they were out of the package. And the answer to that is that they don't really have to be. As long as they're sharp, they're not leaning forward or leaning backward too much. They'll still work just the same.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. Now, knives is something we haven't really talked about. Going on the assumption that most of the time when you're using a knife, you're working in softwoods like basswood, butternut, or pine, or cypress, or tupelo even. And as I mentioned before, you know, when you're working in softwoods, it's critical to have a nice long bevel that comes to a point. If you have a nice long skinny bevel on hardwoods, then it's not going to last as long. So you want a shorter bevel that'll withstand the use on a hardwood. But I have friends, carving friends, who can take a short stone like this, assuming this was a flat stone. There's really no reason why you couldn't do this on, but a little small stone like this, and you can take a knife and go like this, turn it over and go like that, and you can produce an edge that will just, you can shave with it if you wanted to.
It looks like you could probably use one of those.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, this is what 3 weeks of working at home did for me. Working at home. But anyway, I've never been able to do that. You know, it hasn't been reproducible for me because it's an acquired skill that if you can do it like that, my hat's off to you, and I'm glad you can. And the whole thing about this process is that if you find something that works for you, you know, stick with it and do it. But it's these are just some tips to get you started getting on the right way. But to sharpen knives, generally I'll do it the same way that I'll do stone. The gouges is the same technique. Is that I'll put the stropping, the stone, and I'll hold the knife flat on the stone and using this way here. And to create that long bevel, I will make a continuous motion like this. And this holds it down. I'm pulling the knife away from the cutting edge. And this gives you a good fixed long bevel. And the stropping process is kind of another little tip. You hold the knife again just as flat, And you could pick it up and go all the way over and start again like that, but then you got to pick it up and turn it over and go back the other way. But this is inefficient. You're kind of, if you go like this, then you're wasting this motion going back to start again. So what I do instead is I'll go in one direction, and the error is to roll over that edge and come back. This is not what you want to do, because you're rolling over that edge and you just spent some time sharpening. But instead, when you get to the end of the stroke, lift that edge off the strop, rotate it over, then come back. Lift it and push it. Lift it, pull it, lift and push, lift and pull. Go back like that. This gives a little flick of the wrist, like you see the barbers in the barbershop when they're doing their straight razors on those long strops. That's the kind of the same principle that they use, a little flick of the wrist. But this will pull that edge off. And again, I'm holding this knife down totally flat to the strop and going back and forth. And using that technique, this stropping technique, I generally have good results with sharpening knives as well. So
very cool.
Yeah. So we have lots of products here to choose from. We've gotten to where you have choices, and whether you want to go with the oil stones. We have oil stones in different sizes, and either hard and soft. We have water stones, and we have diamond stones. You usually don't see Arkansas stones in combination form, where they're taking one grit and glued it to the back of another. Frequently see water stones, the diamond stones, so forth, in multiple combination grits. That's probably the way to go if you're just starting off, because it gives you more bang for the buck. And it's a simple matter of just flipping the stone over to use the other grits. Not like you got to pull out another tool or something to do it. You got this all in one tool. But we have the stones, we have the strops, we've got the slit stones, and all the stropping compounds and so forth. So you're well on your way to getting all your tools razor sharp and ready to carve with. So.
And Paul said he'll offer up his arm hair to test anybody's razor that, if they think it's sharp enough.
Told you that?
Oh, maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
anyway.
Paul, we certainly appreciate it, man. You dropped some serious sharpening knowledge on us today. And I know I learned something. I learned that if I've got tools that need to be sharpened, I'm bringing them to Paul and let him take care of that for me. So anyway, well, we appreciate you guys watching. If you got questions about anything Paul talked about or any of the products that he covered here after the fact, drop us some comments below. We'll take a look. We'll answer them. And if we don't know the answer, we'll get with Paul and we'll get you at least the right answer to him back to you. So, yeah, he's excited about that. Paul does a lot of stuff behind the scenes. So we're glad that we could draw him out into the public eye. And if you're getting into carving and you want to see more about Paul's stuff, there's a book that we've got on the shelf called Carving a Bellamy Eagle, written and fully done by Paul. Great work. And we appreciate all he does for the company. He's been with us a long time. RolfeWoodcarving.com is where you want to go and to check him out. That's RolfeWoodcarving.com.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. So show him a little love. Go out and check him out and see what all he's got. But anyway, we appreciate you watching. We thank you, Paul, for coming out and showing us what we were doing wrong before and now how we can do it right. And so, again, thank you guys for watching. This is Chris with Abrasive and Proud of It Live. Mike Z's not here, but on his behalf, we'll talk to you later.